So in the last video I ran into a few more problems, so in this video I'm going to see what I can do to try and fix those things. For starters, last time my gain balance knob there didn't work too well, so I changed these 100 kilo ohm resistors out for 10 kilo ohm resistors, so this variable resistor here can change the ratio of these two resistances a lot more. Now I didn't bother changing these 100 kilo ohm resistors here with 10 kilo ohms since it's still a 1-to-1 ratio, which is the same as the 1-to-1 ratio up here, so that shouldn't matter all that much. We'll see how that works out. Also, I unwound one of my electrode wires from the cable a little bit, so I can rub this one separately and test my idea that it might be static electricity giving me extra noise. So I think if it is static electricity, then when I rub one of these separately, it should give me a DC offset, because it'll only be building up a static charge on one of them. So that's what I got planned for that. I also added a bunch more solder to my electrode pennies so I can use the conductive jelly and get better connections, or at least more balanced connections between the two opposite signal electrodes, which should improve common mode rejection. And also, before I start this up, it's worth knowing that I've also changed my electrode placement a bit to match what was in the BPM biosignals video. So I'm using the Eindhoven electrode placement now, with my left leg electrode at the lower left part of my torso, which is the ground. I moved that over from the right side, where I originally had it. And then instead of having the electrodes in the middle of my chest and down under my armpit, I now have them at my two shoulders, which are my left and right arm electrodes. Alright, so here we go. First of all, I have the multimeter here on the output of the integrator, so that shows how much DC offset I'm subtracting off. And the first thing I'm going to do is rub just one of the electrode wires up against me, and if the DC offset changes, then that might support my theory that it's the extra noise is caused by static electricity. So I'm trying to be really careful to only move one of these wires. And you can see that there is plenty of noise being added onto it, but the DC offset is not changing at all really. So I think this shows that it's not static electricity building up. So everything I said in that last video about static electricity, just forget that, because that was wrong. So now I want to test the balance knob, so I'm going to start with the variable resistor turned all the way in one direction, and then slowly turn all the way in the other direction while I'm recording, and then take a look and see what the noise does. There we go, and I'll start turning now. There, and I'm all the way in the other direction now. So let's stop this. It doesn't look like much happened. It does look like I had a smaller amount of noise in here. Let's listen to it and see what's going on. So it does sound like it worked. Over here, I had a pretty loud 60 Hertz, and then it got pretty quiet over in here when the knob was about in the middle of its range, and then I think it started to get a little bit louder at the end. So I'm going to say that it did work, but there's still a whole bunch of noise on it throughout the entire recording. So it looks like some other noise source is much louder than the 60 Hertz. So for right now, that common mode adjustment knob is not really all that useful for me to have. And I don't think the new electrode placement did all that much good for me either. As a matter of fact, I think it was a little bit worse than before. And in a way that kind of makes sense. The Eindhoven electrode placement was developed specifically to measure the direction of the electric field of your ECG signal when you're completely stationary laying in a hospital bed. But it also has a wider spacing between the electrodes than my last placement, and it includes more of my arm and chest muscles in the signal path between those two electrodes. So it's going to pick up a bit more muscular noise. And also, while the direction of my ECG signal might be kind of interesting, it's not specifically what I'm after, so I'm going to switch back to the old electrode placement, and that should work a little bit better for me. So that's going to be it for this video. The balance knob worked, but it ended up not being all that useful. The new electrode placement ended up being just a little bit worse than before, and I was wrong about that cable movement noise source. But it's not a failure, since I learned stuff, so the next video should be, I don't know, something different.